Hey, it's Adrian from demcrumbliestech, and today I'm reviewing the Moto G Stylus 2020 model. I know I'm late to the party. There is a 2021 model and newer phones, of course, but this was a really good price on Amazon. I was able to get it for about 240 Canadian on a lightning sale, and that works out to about 185 US. So that's pretty good price. But I want to go into the specs, and if you're looking for a phone that's, a decent price, just to let you know what the performance is like, battery life. Okay, so first we have the phone. Get to that in a sec. In terms of accessories, you have a manual, of course, SIM eject tool. There's a charging cable, so USB Type-C, of course, and finally the charging brick. So no headphones or anything like that, so pretty minimal package. Okay, so before we get into the rest of the video, I know this is annoying to ask, but if you do find this video helpful by the end of it, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps small channels like mine. Thanks, guys. Okay, so looking at the build quality of the phone, it's pretty good. There's no creaking or anything like that, and I just have the gloves on because it is kind of a fingerprint magnet. So on the front of the phone, you have the selfie camera here. On the bottom, you have a 3.5mm jack, USB Type-C port, speakers, stylus holder. On the side, you have a textured power button for grip. You have the volume rockers. Nothing on the front. I believe there's an internal mic here. And on the other side, you have the SIM card tray / SD card holder. So you can do both of them. On the back of the phone, you have the fingerprint reader, which is the Motorola logo. You also have a main camera, macro camera, and this is the wide angle video camera. It can't take photos, it's only for video. And then of course the LED flash. So all in all, it's a pretty nice looking phone actually for the price. I'm really liking this gradient type of dark blue that fades up into the black. It's done really quite well. And the phone is curved enough where, it's easy to just rotate it and flip it around in the hand. So it's pretty easy to hold. Now, this finish though, because it isn't a matte finish, it's really shiny. It's really prone to fingerprints front and back. All right, so I'm gonna do a first boot up. Since this thing is such a fingerprint magnet, figured I'd put the gloves on, or else I'm gonna just be cleaning this every couple of seconds. Okay, so we're finally on the home screen. Looks pretty nice. Pretty clear, pretty crisp. And you can see that's with the brightness turned all the way down, so it's quite dim. And that's with it cranked to the max. So, I mean, it seems pretty bright to me actually. But when I do the outside test in the sunlight, then I'll get a good idea of how bright it really is. So a few quick specs about the phone. It has a 6.4-inch IPS LCD screen running at a refresh rate of 60 Hz. The resolution is 2300 by 1080 pixels and a pixel density of 399. The phone's powered by a Snapdragon 665 CPU and an Adreno 610 GPU. The phone comes with 4 GB of RAM and 128 GB of onboard storage, which is expandable to an additional 512 with a SD card. The phone has a 4000 mAh battery and a 3-lens setup. The main camera is a 48 megapixel shooter. The macro is a 2.2 megapixel shooter, and the wide angle camera is a 16 megapixel shooter. So let me get into one of the main features of the phone, which is the included stylus, and it might be the reason some of you are buying this phone or consider buying it. So as soon as you pop the stylus out, you can see that you have these quick access icons here. I'm just gonna click on the first one, and you can see as I'm just drawing around, there's not really any noticeable delay or input lag or anything like that, so it works quite well. Now, if you're not gonna be taking a lot of notes and you're just navigating around the phone, the stylus does work well for that too. So you can see I can navigate pretty easily. I can pull down the quick access. It's pretty fluid. And then just taking a look at all my apps. So all in all, stylus is pretty easy to use if you're gonna be taking notes or if you wanna use it to navigate around. So this phone's powered by a Snapdragon 665 processor. Now, if you're upgrading from a phone with a lower spec processor, it'll be appreciated, but if you're coming from a phone with a higher spec, you'll definitely notice it. You can see as I'm navigating around the phone, that's pretty easy. If I check my news feed, for example, that loads pretty quickly, providing my internet can keep up. Launching into an app like YouTube, same thing. It loads pretty quickly as long as my internet keeps up. And you can have a decent amount of apps, open, and it's still pretty fluid. Now, I did notice that when you're launching a game for the first time, and probably similar with many other phones, there is a bit of a wait. So you can see it did launch into the game, pretty quickly, but now, waiting for the game to load from storage and download updates and things like that, it is going to take a while. But you can see it's already ready to go. So definitely not the fastest, but it's still decent, still usable. Taking a look at the screen, it is a 6.4-inch screen with an 89% screen to body ratio. The screen has about 399 ppi, let's say 400 ppi, and it's 2300 by 1080 resolution, which puts it in HD+. The display is an IPS display. Now, the screen does get quite bright. I have it in max brightness here. If I put it all the way down, you can see it's quite dim, barely noticeable. This is about halfway, and then 3/4, and then finally full brightness. So believe me, it does get quite bright. Now, in terms of direct sunlight, it's not the brightest screen out there, but it's still fairly usable in bright sunlight. So here's just a quick demo of what the video looks like playing something on YouTube. So the phone is set to max brightness right now. Okay, so let's talk about battery life. The battery life on this phone is actually pretty good. It is a 4000 milliamp battery, and while I've been using it, I have the brightness maxed all the way out, and I only have my Wi-Fi and location connected most of the time. You can see from this battery discharge test, I've been playing this YouTube video for about 7 minutes, and I've only lost 2% battery at full brightness on the screen. Now, it wasn't a full width video, mind you. In terms of charging, I charged it for 6 minutes and I was able to get 4% back using the supplied power brick. So battery life is really good and it's really quick to charge. So one thing that I've been pretty impressed with is the max volume on this phone. It gets quite loud. I don't think you're gonna have an issue. So I'm just gonna crank it, put it near my microphone. So you can hear it does get quite loud. Actually it gets so loud, in fact, that sometimes the phone vibrates if it's like a particularly bass heavy song. So sound-wise, you're not gonna have any issues there. So one thing to keep in mind is when you're in the camera app and you're specifically in the video section like I am here, this is using the 48 megapixel lens. But if you switch to the wide angle lens, which is what they call the action camera, you would think you would keep the phone in this traditional landscape style to get wide angle video. But actually this phone is set up so that you have to hold it in a portrait orientation to actually get wide angle video. So if you like holding it in portrait and you don't wanna, orient it this way, then this is pretty handy. Now, I did not find any setting to switch it where you can rotate it this way. So you just always have to keep it in portrait mode when you're recording wide angle shots. So another area where I've been, satisfied is the camera quality. So the main lens is not anything, super fancy, but the macro lens actually does a pretty good job. You could see I took some photos close up of a tree here and of a wall. So you can see the different detail in the brick here. These photos are taken with the 48 megapixel camera, and you can see the colors are pretty true to life. They're not overly saturated, which is something that I prefer. Looking at the selfie mode, so this is with full beautification and then with beautification off. Okay, so touching on some of the settings available in the camera app, you can see you have the option to turn stabilization on or off. Going into the settings for photos, you can pick different aspect ratios and different megapixel sizes. For video options. Now this is with the main lens, which is the 48 megapixel. So you have the option for 4K UHD, 4K UHD at a 19:9 aspect ratio, full HD at 60 frames per second, Full HD at 30 frames per second, Full HD at a 19:9 aspect ratio, and HD. Now, looking at the action cam, which is the wide angle lens at the 16 megapixels, you don't have any 4K options. These are the only options available. So it's Full HD 60 frames per second, Full HD 30 frames per second, Full HD at 19:9, and then HD. Looking at the selfie camera, you have options again similar to the main camera, different aspect ratios and megapixel count. For slow motion video, you have Full HD at 120 frames per second or HD at 240 frames per second. In terms of the shooting modes, you have a portrait mode here, a cutout mode where it tries to isolate you from the background, macro mode, spot color, night vision, which is not that great, cinematograph, panoramic mode, a live filter, and then for video modes, you have macro, slow motion, time lapse, and augmented reality stickers. Okay, so here's a quick demo of Call of Duty Mobile. So you can see it's pretty easy to move around in the game. There's not really any stutters or hiccups or anything like that, so that's pretty good. I also tried PUBG Mobile, which was pretty much the same experience. And I also downloaded Genshin Impact just to see how much it would suffer, and it did suffer. It was pretty much unplayable, so I'm not even gonna show that here. Okay, so you know how most phones, they come with like a few extra quirks or special features with them. So aside from the stylus on this, one is if you tap it, you get this kind of peek or glance screen with information. You could program text, you know, weather, emails, things like that. Other phones have the always on screen. This one has this. The other thing is when you go to pick it up and it senses motion, again, it's gonna put that screen on with the quick notification so you don't have to unlock it. Okay, so the second kind of unique feature quirk I've noticed is if you take your finger and you slide it down the fingerprint reader, you can actually pull down the notifications. So you can just slide them up or down, which is pretty neat. So as soon as you unlock the phone, you have access to that. And the last feature, which seems, you know, kind of silly, but I've actually found myself using it a lot when, you know, going down the stairs at night or opening the door, is if you just double slam it like that, kind of what some people call a karate chop, it activates the LED light, which really comes in handy actually. So I've gone through most of the features of the phone. Now, here are 3 potential deal breakers. One is there's no NFC, so no near field communication, meaning if you're planning to use the phone, you know, just to tap for payments with a credit card, that's not gonna be possible. There's also no wireless charging, so you can't just pop this on a wireless charging pad. You do have to use the Type-C charging port. And lastly, there's no official IP rating on this. So it's just rated as, you know, being splash resistant. So obviously, you know, you're gonna wanna be careful with this around water. So I think if you're realistic in your expectations and you consider the price that you're paying for something like this, it is a pretty good value and it is something I would recommend. Now, taking another quick look at those deal breakers, you know, if you need wireless charging, if you need an official IP rating, if you need NFC, then definitely, you know, skip this phone. Now, if you consider all the other things together now, so you get 128 gigs of storage, pretty good. You get the 4,000 milliamp battery life, which, you know, is pretty adequate for this phone considering the screen. That's great. Volume level, it's pretty loud, no complaints there. Camera, it's average, nothing special. You know, the macro lens, I would say, really excels. The wide angle lens, that's pretty good as well with the 4K video, no hiccups or anything like that. So, I mean, all in all, it is a pretty good phone. The other areas, if you're gonna be buying this phone and you're gonna be, you know, playing a lot of games, unless you're playing stuff like, you know, at the PUBG, Call of Duty mobile level, you know, you're gonna be disappointed. Now, keep in mind also, this phone does only have 4 gigabytes of RAM. So as apps, games, things like that start to get more demanding, you know, that 4 gigs is gonna age pretty quickly and you'll find yourself wanting something more. But if you're okay with those limitations and you're just looking for a phone, you know, kind of like a secondary, a backup phone, or, you know, something that you know you're gonna replace in a year or so, given the cost of the phone, then it is a really solid buy. Okay, so I hope my review was helpful to you. If there's something that I missed or if there's something that I didn't go into detail enough and you'd like more information, just please leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If this was helpful, if you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm hoping to grow this channel and start to review more phones, more technology products, and just more phone accessories and things like that. So a sub or a like would be hugely helpful to me.